Alright, here is the section on quadratic formula and the discriminant. It's going to be broken up into two different things, but I'll flip through them. You can see what the quadratic formula here is. It can be complicated when you first see it, but you get used to it. Basically what it does is it gives us the answers like our graphing would have done, or like completing the square would do, except it does it just by plugging in A, B, and C. Any quadratic formula works for the any quadratic equation works, but A cannot be equal to 0 because then it's just linear. Okay, so I'm going to show you this just because if you want to pause it, this is also written in your book, but this is the explanation of how we get the quadratic formula. It's not just something made up. It's actually been derived from the general form of the quadratic. Okay. This is the finished version of it, and boom, there it is. Okay, so here's the first problem. The first thing we need to do is we need to recognize if this is in standard form, and right now it's not, so we simply move it into standard form. X squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, and then we start plugging it in. Alright, so x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and we just start putting numbers in. Okay, negative the b value, so here a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 2, and c is equal to negative 8. So we're just going to plug those in. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so from there we just start simplifying it. Okay, so I get 2 plus or minus the square root of, this is 4, and all of this is positive 32, all over 2. Okay, this is equal to x. Okay, so now I have 2 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 2, which is 2 plus or minus 6 over 2. So what I get is I get two answers, 2 plus 6 over 2 and 2 minus 6 over 2. So this is 8 over 2, which is 4. There's one solution. And this is negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So if we graph this, our line would cross the x-axis at positive 4 and negative 2. Okay? So we have two solutions, and we'll recognize why in a little bit. And it turned out that these two are perfect solutions because we had the perfect square root underneath. Alright, give this one a try, pause it, and there you go. Okay, word problem. We've got this model that shows about throwing a shot put. Okay, so we're just going to take these values. We know that a is equal to negative 0.04, b is equal to 0.84, and c is equal to 2. It's already in that format, so we don't have to worry too much about putting it in that format. Okay, so we take each one of these numbers, plug it into the formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and this is what we get. Okay, we look at that for a minute. We've got the b value right there, b value again, a value, c value, and a value. We end up with two answers, negative 2.16 and 23.16. Well, it's not possible. It doesn't make sense to have the shot put go backwards. So our answer would be that the ball will land about 23.16 meters from the athlete. Okay, so this is just plug and chug. Honestly, it's unfortunate, but you know, deal with it. All right. Word problem. Same thing. A, B, C, plug it in, work it out. Moving on. All right. One of the things about this section is how to use, when to use what method. So what we have up here is the four methods, actually the five methods, excuse me: graphing, square roots, factoring. Remember, graphing and square roots came in the same section. Factoring we learned a while ago. Completing the square, quadratic formulas. Here's when. So what would we use here? we'll just kind of look at this. We'll see that this one does not have an x term, so therefore we use the square roots. Okay. This one looks kind of perfect, so we're going to factor it. Okay. Anytime we've got something that we don't want to spend any time with, we can always use the quadratic formula. We can also always graph it. I would suggest it, but that if you're a little crazy, which some of you may be, you might want to use graphing as a method. Okay. Here's another one. Notice that we have x squared, so what we could do is we could use completing the square. We could use, because it has a coefficient of 1, we could use factoring maybe. No, actually this one doesn't factor. We could use the quadratic formula, we could use graphing. So in this case we have 3 different options: quadratic formula, completing the square, or graphing. And then this one looks a little complicated, so we might just want to jump into the quadratic formula or into, oops, where'd that go? Okay, or into graphing. And that would allow us to get to our answer much quicker. Okay, try these 3. I would suggest you pause it, and I'm gonna move to the next one. Okay, the discriminant is that magical stuff underneath the square root. Okay, and basically what it does is it helps us figure out how many solutions are there going to be. Now notice it's not the square root. Okay, it's not the square root. It's just the b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so this is just a way of determining how many solutions we're going to have. Okay, so we have 3 different options. Remember, we have one where there's 2 answers, where it crosses the x-axis twice. We have one answer where the vertex is on the x-axis, and then we have the type of answer where there's no real solutions. Well, here's what happens. If our discriminant is positive, we're going to have 2 solutions. Okay? Positive, 2 solutions. Okay? If we have a discriminant that is equal to 0, we're going to have 1 solution. Okay? So a positive discriminant, 2 solutions. A 0 discriminant, that's right, that's speaking English, is a 0. And if we have a negative discriminant, we end up getting no real solutions. Okay, so just by telling what b squared minus 4ac is, we can determine how many answers there are. Okay, so let's do a practice. Remember, we're just paying attention to b squared minus 4ac. Oops. Okay, so here a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to 5. Remember, I have to put it into standard form. Don't ever try and do this until you've moved it into standard. Okay, so negative 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay, so this is 9. Oops, not like, where is it? There it is. Okay. 4 times 2 is 8, times 5 is 40, so that's minus 40, which gives us negative 31. Negative discriminant says no real solutions. Okay, just a negative tells us immediately no. Positive, 2 solutions. 0, 1 solution. Negative, no solutions. Try that one on your own. Here's a few practice for you to try specifically on that concept. And that's it. I'm out.